you're gonna notice it's a new skin on there.
Ooh, I'm looking at the first, first mock draft that somebody released right after they started handing out the picks. Jacksonville taking Evan Neal, and then the Lions taking Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah. And in this mock draft, they don't have Thibodeau being taken until 9th by Denver. And they have the Giants, so they have the Giants' first traded pick taking Kenny Pickett. And then the Falcons taking fucking Malik Willis. That's
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Rally Towel Sports. I'm Corey. With me, as always, is Todd. And wait a second, that's not Bobby. We got Nathan Nickell joining us this evening from 4 Laps Down. Nate, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Man, if I was any better, I'd be Twins. I'm telling you. Or potentially a Georgia fan, of which I'm not. So
no, we're not.
We are not.
Nathan repping my boys in orange and blue over there, sitting down there with that little Gators helmet. So Todd, you're a little outnumbered tonight. We got Todd, a UK fan. We got 2 Gators and a Wildcat sitting here, but obviously Todd got the better of us this year, so he's off and running on that one. But no, Nathan, we really appreciate you jumping on the stream tonight. I'm excited to have you on. We've been talking about doing this for a while now, so it's good to get somebody on. Hopefully I'll be able to join you in one of your many beautiful programs that you guys got going on your page. So Matt, we're bringing you in. Why don't tell us about 4 Laps Down? Tell us about 4th and Long. Tell us about everything. You guys got a bunch of stuff going on over there, including Busch Light.
You did catch me during dry January though, so we can certainly shotgun a Code Red. I've got plenty in the beer fridge, but
dry January, man.
Yeah, I know it's rough, but I still got to prove to my wife that I have a little self-control, so it's all good.
Yourself a little too, I think, right?
Yeah, I already knew. I didn't need 30 days. And sure. I didn't drink Busch Light today. I still have self-control.
Right. I watched the sun go up and down and didn't have a beer, so I
at least waited until it was dark, so that's self-control in my book, right?
Yeah. Bruce jumping in the chat. What happened to Bobby? His beard looks good.
Hey,
shots fired.
I'll take that as a compliment, but I'm not sure that the other guy would. So there's that. Sorry, Bobby.
That's awesome. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm thankful for you guys having me on your show. I learned earlier today that I am the first guest on Rally Towel Sports, so I feel very humbled and honored. Hopefully I do a good enough job that you don't ixnay the whole guest idea. We toyed with some guest hosts last year on 4th and Long, our football show. We had a lot of fun with it. It's a lot of work wrangling a guest every week, especially for 17 weeks plus a postseason. So more power to you guys, but happy to help and happy to be here. So for those watching at home that maybe aren't aware of what 4 Laps Down is, it's our sports page that we started. It was kind of our pet project during the pandemic last year when the world was kind of brought to its knees and we were bored and wanted to do something. And so some of us got together and said, let's create a Facebook page, a Facebook group, and see where it goes, and it started It started with, one of these right here, right? A phone on a tripod in my basement, going live on Facebook, drinking Bush Light as Corey is now, and talking about everything, music, sports, all the above. And we,
Sound familiar, Todd?
Yeah, just a little
right.
bit.
And so we were fortunate enough that we found a lot of members of our existing social media communities had a lot in common. We like to have a good time. We are enthusiasts of leisure, as I like to say. We like to have a cold beverage. We like to talk about music. We like to listen to music. We like to take music requests from the chat. We like to talk about sports, and we landed on something that was niche enough that we said, let's dive deep. And that was, of course, NASCAR. It's kind of how it all started. I've been a NASCAR fan since I was old enough to walk. I'm old enough and lucky enough to say I've been in person to a race that Dale Earnhardt Sr. won.
Wow.
And so I've been around a long time, and
On Earth or NASCAR?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, both.
Yes.
Um, so my Twitch chat regularly reminds me how old I am in comparison to most of them. But
You look good
when
for
you
40, though.
you stop it, not yet, almost, but not yet. So we started with some NASCAR programming, and NASCAR was the first major sport to come back from the pandemic. And in I believe it was mid-May, I think, before anyone was in stadiums, before anything, NASCAR said, you know what? We're going to test all the personnel. We don't need fans. We can do this. People watch on TV. That's our bulk audience. Let's make some money. It came back, and I think America kind of took notice. I think a lot of people noticed NASCAR for the first time and realized it can be a little bit fun. Now, granted, it is certainly way more fun in person than on TV. I'll give them that. But so we started with just some NASCAR stuff. A live stream on Facebook talking about the race. We organized a big driver pool for the Coca-Cola 600, which is one of the crown jewel races of the year. And we ended up having enough people to participate that every single driver in the field had someone paired with them in the raffle.
Wow.
Right? Everybody Venmo'd. It was like $10, and then the races are in stages. So there was kind of like quarters, Super Bowl squares, if you will, first quarter, second quarter, etc. Bit of first stage winner, second stage winner, third stage winner.
Awesome.
And then that race actually is the only one that has 4 stages. So we had 4 giveaways that night. And what we found was that the popularity of the page was a little less about NASCAR and more or less just, hey, it's people having a good time, reminding us of what we want things to get back to,
Sure. And I think just from an outside perspective, I've been to a couple of races, and I've been to Kentucky Speedway. I've been to Indy a couple of times, and obviously that's not NASCAR, but nonetheless, still a motorsports community.
No, they actually. So, if you've been to the Indy 500, I would say that that's one of the most electric racing atmospheres I've ever been to. I've been 6 times. NASCAR does race at Indy,
and I tell you, I cannot get enough of those fuzzies and vodka, the fuzzies in the lemonade and vodka, the fuzzies vodka and the lemonades.
Yeah,
I mean, they make them, and I tell you, I can't get away from them now. They're just my summer go-to beverage: fuzzies, vodka, and lemonade.
Yeah, God bless Fuzzy Zeller for his golf course designs, his contribution to the sport of golf, and as well as the fuzzies and lemonade. There you go.
But what I was gonna say is, I kind of feel like those, that race that you talked about, it's kind of interesting that there's only one of them. Those races where they're broken down into stages like that. I feel like that is a useful tool to bring outsiders into the sport, because what's the biggest complaint you get from somebody that isn't into NASCAR? It's too long. It's too boring.
They're driving in circles. I don't know what's happening.
Not only that, I can't stay engaged for 500, 400 laps, however long the race is. When you break it down in stages like that, it's 4 mini races encompassed in one large race, and I think that makes it a little bit easier for the layman fan to get in. And speaking of laymans, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Josh Layman for sharing the video tonight. I appreciate that. Your brother Nick. So we got the brothers liking the stream as well. Nick liking the video. Bruce liking it as well. Amber, and of course Bobby, who's chilling tonight. he's liking the video as well. So I appreciate everybody dropping in. If you haven't already, go out and Nathan, if you can jump in the chat and share your page in the chat with everybody, that would be awesome. We got a great community of people here. So be
Yeah,
sure to jump
absolutely.
over to Four Laps Down and go ahead and follow the page. So you guys went through the pandemic and got this thing going. So tell me, where is it at now? I mean, you started with a phone on a tripod. What's going on with everybody now? You know, is it still just, you know, a couple of guys shooting the shit, or what's going on with the whole community and everything?
It's always a couple of guys just shooting the shit. I mean, after all, that's kind of how we started. That's kind of our roots. But
Hell yeah.
you know, we have expanded to just beyond NASCAR. I would say that our regularly scheduled programming this time of year certainly NFL focused. You can see the flag with the logo in the background. This is our Four Laps Down logo. That's our logo for Fourth and Long. That's our NFL show. It's all done out of the same page. We don't have multiple pages. It's too much for people to follow. So we just do everything from Four Laps Down. But Fourth and Long is our NFL show, and that really started much the same way. We had spent a summer, and by the way, we didn't just do NASCAR live streams. We also did we we started calling them Silver Thunder Radio Hour, which for those who don't know, Silver Thunder is my alter ego over on Twitch, and not here to promote that. But we started calling it Silver Thunder Radio. We would literally go live just like this in a Zoom meeting. And we started before anything substantial, just literally a Zoom meeting. It's on Facebook Live. There you go. And we would just play country music and take requests and drink as many beers as we could.
How many times did you get approached by copyright people for stuff like that? How many times did you get muted?
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
All the time. I still to
You
this
guys
day.
are the COVID version of pirate radio.
So what we did was we would have a live stream and we would call it the Silver Thunder Radio Hour. And then anytime we were playing throwback music and trying to solicit like 80s and 70s country requests, we called it Throwing It Back to the COVID Classics. And
Beautiful.
It's just nonsense and it sticks, right? And it sticks in people's heads.
And Patrick's jumping in the chat right now saying the good old days, and right as you came out of your mouth, COVID classic.
So I got to give a shout out to my boy Pat Redmond. So Pat Redmond was an OG. He's an OG Four Laps Down guy, and Pat's not a sports guy. He's not. I mean, he likes sports. He'll watch them. He'll talk about them, but Pat wants a good time. Pat's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time, and he wants you to have a good time with him. And Pat was instrumental. The COVID Classics, I think, was actually Pat's idea. So phenomenal timing, Pat, as always. And I think we started it to troll Pat's significant other, who's not a big fan of that genre of country music. And
so when you say that genre of country music, what do you mean by that?
Well, she's not much of a country fan to begin with, but especially like the older stuff, the Southern rock,
so
the Waylon. She likes some of it. But what we learned and how we started every COVID Classic show was Flirting with Disaster by Molly Hatchet, which is her least favorite song in the world. So I don't know, Leslie Schwing, if you're out there watching tonight, hello, shout out from the Thunderdome. And so as the summer progressed and we're doing all these live streams, I was starting to dabble out of boredom in different types of things like Streamlabs and different equipment, because I'm like, we do so much of this and I'm so interested personally in the production quality side of live streaming and broadcasting. And I have zero background in broadcasting whatsoever. So I started dabbling a little bit and I found myself having all these cool ideas of I can do this and I can do that. But I'm like, well, what are we going to talk about? We're going to go live. What are we going to talk about? So one of them was, it was a week before the NFL kicked back off last fall. So not this previous season, but the year before. So 2020? It's all blur.
2020.
And I said, listen, we've been going live talking about NASCAR and people love it. Imagine if we talked about the NFL, which is everyone's favorite sport.
Right.
And so we threw a group of guys together, and our first guest was a gentleman by the name of Robert Luke Nichols, who you may know.
Oh, my man.
I texted him and I said, we're going live on Facebook to talk about the NFL. Come be a Bengals fan with me so I'm not outnumbered.
That's awesome.
because it was me, two Vikings fans, and a Raiders fan.
Wow, that
Right.
is an eclectic group. Are they all from the Midwest? Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, or
So the Raiders fan is from Lexington. All
okay?
the rest of us are from Cincinnati area.
Okay, so we got a Raiders
S-
fan in the community here over here as well. Bruce, obviously enemies this week, and I'm really
yeah.
excited for fourth and long this week to hear you go toe to toe with one of the Raiders compadres.
So my buddy Chris Land, who's also a Four Laps Down OG. So I actually met Chris Land. He's one of my best friends to this day. I met him because we started Four Laps Down, and he found the page and reached out, and we just kind of developed a relationship. So not only has it been a lot of fun, it's actually I've developed some really good long lasting friendships through this. Pat is another one. I didn't know him before Four Laps Down, and I to this day I can't remember, because at this point it doesn't matter. I can't even remember how he found the page. But just having met some great guys and being able to start the show, we were 5 episodes in before we had a name. Fourth and Long. I think it was week 5 or 6 last year before we even had a name, before we even had anything other than just kind of just basic Streamlabs graphics,
Right.
and me saying, hey, it's really cool. I can do this thing where there's like a thing before the stream. It says starting soon. And everyone was like, okay, but are we going to drink beer and cuss and listen to me?
No,
I'm
I
like,
think
well,
your
yeah,
intro
of course.
graphic is cool. I love it. It's it's moving around, it's spinning, it's going to different screens,
Yeah.
and all this stuff. It's really really nice.
It's been a long process. It's been,
Sure.
if I go back and I watch some live streams from 18 months ago and then see what we're doing now, it's like, oh man, people actually watch this crap. But yeah, so Fourth and Long has been one of the sincerely best things about my adult life that we've ever done. Just the amount of fun that we have, the way that we've connected with our community. I have more than once been out in public wearing something Four Laps Down and been stopped. Hey, I like that Facebook, but you like that Facebook page? And I try to be humble. I'm like, oh, it's mine. I'm the guy. I'm like, oh yeah,
Right. Dude, that's so much better than me. I'm just like, do I like it? Let me tell you something,
count.
sir.
So my buddy Chris, who's also on the show with me, he's a Raiders fan. We drove out to the NASCAR race in
Marcus,
Dover.
what's up? Jumping in the chat.
My boy. I'm gonna talk about Tamarcus here in just a minute. Tamarcus, don't you go anywhere. That's my boy, man. So my buddy Chris and I, we were hosted by a very generous sponsor to go out to the NASCAR race in Dover, and this past year, and we were at the gas station in my hometown. Which, granted, our following is very heavily concentrated here in the area because it started kind of as like a local page, not necessarily. Right, exactly. But there's a lot of people in the Southwest Ohio area. That's, I would say, probably 60 to 70% of our
Cool.
initial crew. We were at the gas station. This is like after midnight. We're driving through the night. We're at the gas station 5 minutes from my house. I'm wearing a Four Laps Down hoodie, and Chris was with me. He's wearing a hat like this one, and some guy stops us and he's like, I love this page. Are you guys like this page? And Chris goes, well, he started this page, because Chris is not humble. Chris is like,
Let's go.
he's the guy, and you'll know it. And so we tell this guy, we're like, oh yeah, we do this Facebook show. It's, we talk about football and NASCAR and all this stuff. He goes, yeah, my buddy showed it to me. And I didn't know who his buddy was. He told me thinking it was like a mutual contact or whatever, but just to be able to be in the community and see that people are enjoying what we're doing.
Cool.
We're not doing charity work. We're not saving kittens. We're not rescuing babies and putting out fires and all that stuff. We're just having fun. But the fact that people are able to have fun with us is huge to me, And then this past spring, we did a show actually called Four Laps Down, where it was a NASCAR themed interview style show. A lot different than
throughout the entire sport, whether they crew, marketing, a bunch of different guys I saw. It was pretty neat.
Of which Tamarcus was one. He was our third guest, I believe. So Tamarcus works in the sport of NASCAR. He works for Rick Ware Racing, one of the most established teams in NASCAR. And he works on their marketing outreach team. He takes a lot of the official photography at the tracks. He's a fantastic photographer and just an all around good guy. And so I'm Tamarcus. Thanks for checking us out tonight. But but yeah, so we had this episodic interview style TV show, which was quite a bit different than anything we'd ever done before.
Yeah.
And we did 8 episodes, and we had some phenomenal guests. Phenomenal guests. I mean, the stories. There are stories that Demarcus and I have shared, that he shared with me, that aren't for the air, just to protect the guilty, right? But just some of the stories that Demarcus was able to share. Some of the stories that a guy like Doug Rice, who's the president of PRN, one of the most prolific radio broadcast networks, that they do about 50% roughly of the NASCAR Cup races. They're the nationally syndicated broadcast. He's the main guy on the radio. He's the president of the company. I mean, he's, by all intents and purposes, the John Madden of, or I guess more like Al Michaels, if you will, because he's kind of the play-by-play of NASCAR radio. And he was willing to come on our show. Just phenomenal. We had a guy who has become a good friend, Chris Woody Womack, who actually worked for he worked for, at the time, Go Fast Racing, and was able to walk us through. He was our first ever guest, who was able to walk us through the 2000 aftermath of the finish of the 2000 Daytona, where Ryan Newman was almost killed in that accident. Wow. And his team was involved in that incident, and just walking us through, thank God everybody walked away. But just to walk us through that 24-hour period of, we don't know, he may not pull through, we have no idea, and to be directly on the team that was involved in that collision, and just kind of have that personal connection to one of the most memorable, not for a good reason, but one of the most memorable moments in the recent history of the sport. I mean, just
that's to have that kind of ability to reach out, touch, not literally, obviously, touch those people that are involved and that close and a firsthand. So kind of spinning it a little bit, my turn for a little bit of a racing story. So I used to work out in Colorado, and I worked at a high-end ski shop. Basically the white glove service. We're going to take care of the guests. We're going to, put their boots on, lick them for them if they ask, if they're tipping enough, whatever they need, really. We had Dabo Sweeney come in this bitch, like Dabo Sweeney and the entire Clemson coaching staff. And I'm taking off the boots of Dabo's wife and making jokes with him and ha. And hey, you guys recruited this kid out of my high school, Jackson Carmen. You ever heard of him? He's like, oh yeah, out of Fairfield. And I was like, yep, you know it. And now look at him on the Bengals. But so one day I'm sitting in the shop, and we'll get these orders that come through, and so we get their skis ready for them beforehand. And I get the first one, and it was a woman's name, and the last name was Franchitti. I'm like,
I know where this is going.
And so I pull the next one out, Dario Franchitti. I said, are you sure that this is who this is? And so I keep going, and I get another one, Dixon. I'm like, hold the phone for just a minute. Scott Dixon, Dario Franchitti, walk in the front door of this fucking ski shop at Beaver Creek, Colorado. And I'm just sitting here just like, because, I've been to Indy a couple of times at this point. I picked a couple of racers that I like. Dixon, obviously one of them. Franchitti, obviously a 3-time winner of the Indy 500. And I'm just amazed at this point. So I don't bother them while they're there, and but I'm getting them all checked out at the end. And so Franchitti's coming up, and he's ringing up and paying for everything, and I'd be like, yo, look, I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything to you. At the time, my girlfriend, now my wife, her parents go to the Indy 500 every year. I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything to you. Thank you. You guys were really, really cool. It's like, oh, you guys go to Indy. You guys go to Indy? Really? Oh, did you see Dixon's wreck last year? That shit was crazy, wasn't it? Referencing the 2017 wreck, I believe it was 2017, where Dixon gets hit on the inside wall, flips up, and clears the inside wall from his head by maybe 4 inches. And
that's a wild one.
That insane. Yeah. They couldn't be nicer people, and they were a blast and a lot of fun and really, really nice. So that's my interactions with the race world. And I tell you, anybody that's listening and you're a fan of Rally Town Sports or Line to Gain, and you're joining us tonight, and you haven't had an opportunity to get to a race yet, the best way to get into the sport is to go experience the community and everybody there, and feel the cars running around the track, and more importantly, hear the cars running around the track, and I mean, the intros that they do for these big races with the flyovers and the national anthems, it's really hard not to get into. A couple of shout outs, jumping into the chat. We got a Braden Nickell. Any relation there, Nathan?
Yeah, it's my brother, so ignore anything he says.
Well, he just said you're the coolest guy he knows, so yep, I'll ignore that.
Ignore it, definitely.
Rob, jump in the chat. Rob, what's going on? Look at these beautiful beards. I know. We got the bearded Migos out here tonight. Let's see here. Tamarcus says he's got to come on our show soon. More the merrier. We would love to have
Absolutely.
you. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you want to hear some awesome stories about the inside workings of racing, because that's the thing, and I meant to say this before, so I'll say it now. And Tamarcus also, so Brickware Racing, who Tamarcus works for, they also have an IndyCar team.
He just said that in the chat.
Yeah.
He did IndyCar this year. Yeah.
Yes,
cool.
and so he kind of followed around that team and did their TikToks and their social media and stuff.
Hey,
and he's got some great stories.
We got the Detroit Grand Prix up here. So out on Belle Isle. So maybe we'll have to do a joint meet up there out at Belle Isle and have some fun. Never a bad time. That's one of the coolest races in my opinion. I'm obviously biased. Let's see who else. Chris Ferguson jumping in here says Nathan Dover again this year. I'll be there. TJ,
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it, Chris. I'd like to be there again. That's up in Chris's neck of the woods. He's
there.
He's, by the way, a New York Giants fan.
Oh, we're going to get into the Giants a little bit later. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I'm wearing your Giants blue. It's a great day to be a Giants fan, baby. Giants fans everywhere are just they just won the fucking Super Bowl. They're wee-hoo. So let's see what else we got. Chris Ferguson. Oh no, I already went over that. My bad. TJ Holland saying, "What's up, Nate?" TJ, thanks for
Hey, what's up,
brother.
TJ?
If you guys haven't already, we appreciate you jumping in and 4 laps down Nation coming in strong tonight on the stream. We appreciate you. Go check out Rally Towel Sports. We're a Tuesday, Thursday show. Tuesday Town Hall. We talk about what you want to talk about. Thursdays, that's in our NFL Pick'em, and we discuss the games of last week and get into the games for this week, similar to your 4th and long. So if you can't get enough football 4th and long, come on over on Thursday nights before and get a little appetizer before you get that main course. So
there you go.
I know we've been rambling a little bit here, but and you kind of touched on it a little bit. But Todd, I think you had a couple of questions that you wanted to kind of pick Nathan's brain about, specifically with the channel and with NASCAR.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, I guess my first question is, what was the real impact of COVID on NASCAR? What does the future look like for NASCAR as a professional sport navigating kind of what's going on with COVID?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, as it did most sports, it really hit NASCAR hard. The benefit NASCAR had was that their ability to continue their normal revenue streams didn't always depend on butts in the seats. Mm-hmm. So it allowed them to come back quickly and safely.
So in terms of their revenue streams, is the majority of that dictated by what's on the cars?
Well, so the unique thing about NASCAR in the way that like NFL franchises are owned by different people. They're not owned by the NFL, but the NFL as a whole was kind of its own entity. That is a little bit true with NASCAR, but the teams are quite a bit more independent.
Right.
Quite a bit more independent. In the fact that there isn't revenue sharing from the big teams to the small teams. There's no forced parity, if you will, as far as the business side of the sport. Yeah. On the track, there are obviously regulations that kind of bring the parity of the cars together. And with the next gen car, which we can talk about as well, if you guys want a brand new car debuting in a couple of weeks at the Busch Clash in LA, that parity will get even tighter. But NASCAR has never attempted to or controlled the business side of the and create parity there. So what that means is that you have some teams who are extremely well funded. Hendrick Motorsports, probably the best example. Mm-hmm. Hendrick, obviously Rick Hendrick, the owner, And that's the team that fielded, Jeff Gordon, Terry Labonte's second championship. I mean, Jimmy Johnson's 7 championships, Chase Elliott last year, Kyle Larson this most recent year. Very successful, right?
Right.
Rick Hendrick also owns one of the largest automotive dealer groups in the country. Okay. He started out as a car dealer, started Hendrick Motorsports, and together as they grew. I mean, this man he could buy NASCAR if he wanted, right? So a team like that, if a team like that, is there, you're obviously going to have some of the smaller teams as well. Some of the underfunded teams that depend a lot more on sponsorships. But the flip side of that is better funded teams tend to be able to pay more to the drivers. They get better drivers. So there's you see, there are some teams where if they
it's kind of like baseball in that essence.
That's kind of where I was going too. Is that's very similar to, you're talking like a Yankees versus an Oakland, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
New York is always going to be able to afford to give out the $250 million contracts, whereas Oakland has to basically disperse 250 between 10 people.
Yeah, where you do find some crossover is in the technical side of the sport. So you've got a lot of technical alliances where some of the smaller underfunded teams have alliances with the bigger, better funded teams, to where they're allowed to and able to kind of piggyback off of R&D and testing and things like that to learn. And what a lot of the bigger
Sharing
teams do,
intel, things like that, research, engineering, all of those things.
Yeah, and that's where you'll see some of the teams who have up and coming drivers that they want to be kind of future superstars. They'll allocate them to those lesser teams until they get the experience necessary to be competitive. The best example is a guy named Christopher Bell. He drives the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing. When he first got to the Cup Series, and Christopher Bell has been one of the most winning drivers throughout his whole racing career from the time he was a kid. He's got a dirt racing background. I mean, the guy is an absolute menace behind a wheel, right? But when he first got to the Cup Series, this is the top level of asphalt racing, in the world outside of open wheel. It's the top level. Those guys are really good. And he came in with
open wheel. You're talking Formula One,
IndyCar. That's right. I wouldn't say NASCAR is the top asphalt over like Formula One globally, but they're also apples to oranges. So I look at kind of IndyCar, Formula One, NASCAR as kind of those 3 pinnacles, depending on where you go, right?
Sure.
So Christopher Bell comes in and he runs for Levine Family Racing, which had a technical alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing. So they were both part of Team Toyota. There were some similarities there. They worked together. And then when they determined that Christopher Bell was ready, they gave Eric Jones the boot, gave him that car, and now Eric Jones drives for Team Petty GMS. So there's a lot of moving parts there. But to get back to your original question of how did COVID impact the sport, it did 2 things that are very substantial that I think are worth noting. It proved that competitive sports can go on in an era of pandemic. There's a way to do it. There's a way to make it happen. And then it also really brought to the spotlight the sim racing world. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
Marcus
a hugely
was on that here in the chat, saying that sim racing was a huge contributor.
Yeah. So, and part of what happened was while they're out, iRacing is kind of the preeminent sim racer, at least as far as oval racing goes. You've got some other ones, but iRacing is kind of the top one. You had Fox nationally broadcast an iRacing event that were NASCAR Cup drivers on their simulators at their houses, all racing against playing. I shouldn't say this because the iRacing guys get mad at me. A video game. It's a simulator, but it's a video game. And they broadcast it just like it was any other race. It was fun to watch. Racing fans enjoyed it. And it was something. It was a taste, right? So it was NASCAR did the best job of any sport of trying to stay engaged with their fan bases, right? Everybody else got hung up. Not a criticism because it's understandable, but a lot of other people got hung up on COVID protocol and safety measures. And when can we do this? And when can we do that? Right. How do we test people? NASCAR was just like, all right, look, these tracks are going to be closed off to the public. There's a short list of people, okay, that are allowed inside the tracks that are vital to the team. Not everybody on your team gets to go. It's like the pit crew, the driver, the spotters. A lot of times weren't even allowed in the tracks. They had to stay outside. Everybody gets tested, It was very, and if you guys ever do have to Marcus on your show, have him walk you through those changes because he is an at-track person for these teams. So he can definitely talk more in depth as I don't work for NASCAR. But they proved that the sport can come back, right? The sport can come back. It can be there. The sim racing got everybody through. NASCAR was really only shut down for about 2 months. A lot of people forget that.
What's the typical season calendar wise in terms of NASCAR? What is that? How's that run?
It's very long. So you've got the first week of kind of the season coming up here with the Bush Clash. That is coming up here in a couple of weeks in February. That's a non-points paying race, so consider it like a preseason.
Sure.
But it's got a lot of pomp and circumstance to it. It's always been held at Daytona until this year. They have transformed the LA Memorial Coliseum, where USC plays their home football games, into a quarter mile paved asphalt short track.
So crazy. So Nathan sends me this text earlier today, and he shoots over this picture, and I just see the Coliseum, and I just see asphalt in the middle of it. My literal response to him is, "What in the Sam hell?"
Oh yeah, it's going to be great.
They showed that during the Sunday night game too. They showed the Coliseum turning into a quarter mile racetrack.
That's sick.
And you get the overhead view of that. You're like, holy shit! That's incredible. Architecturally, that's incredible to be able to create that racetrack inside a, arguably one of the most famous football stadiums of all time.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, there's been some crossover between racing and football before. We had the famous game at Bristol Motor Speedway between Virginia Tech and Tennessee, as Bristol literally borders Virginia and Tennessee and is almost exactly halfway between Knoxville and Blacksburg. Right. So it made sense. It was great. It was a regional event, broadcast on ESPN. And it wasn't until they kind of scaled the cameras back that you realize how little of the infield at Bristol, one of the smallest tracks they race on, how little of that infield was covered by the football field. So you realize how big these tracks are. Now, fast forward that to now, and you see they took just that area that was like half of the infield in Bristol, and that's the whole thing. There's not room for garages or anything in the middle of the track. It's literally a quarter mile track with 2 entrances in the wall to get on and off the track. And then if you've got to pull your car, they're going to be pulling the cars in and out through the main tunnel to outside the stadium. I mean, it's tiny. It's absolutely tiny.
That's insane.
But here's the thing, and here's why I think it's great. The grassroots of the sport is local racing, whether it's dirt or asphalt. That's the grassroots. And the grassroots, they're not running 2 mile ovals, right? They're running quarter mile ovals. They're running quarter mile dirt rings. If you there's a really cool track in Rossburg, Ohio that Tony Stewart owns called Eldora, one of the most famous dirt tracks in the world. And Eldora, I think, is like 3/8 of a mile, not quite a half mile. And it's actually really big for a dirt track. I mean, most of these tracks are tiny. So this is kind of a Frankensteinish combination, right? Of short track grassroots at its core racing with the biggest stage in the sport. And I think it's going to be awesome. There are a lot of critics, and I would say most of them are over the age of 60 and have, RIP number 3 tattoos on their back, which Dale's the greatest of all time. No disrespect to Dale, but there's a new wave of fans coming in, and NASCAR really wants to provide a fantastic product for these new fans.
That's what they have to do, and that's what any sport really has to do. Obviously, basketball has done a great job of that. Football continuing to do a great job of that. I would say I wish baseball would catch up with the rest of the. I would even say hockey is doing a great job of that. Soccer continues to explode throughout the United States, and you have to innovate, and that's just any business. Any business whatsoever.
So I think if you look at you look at the myriad of professional sports or the umbrella of all professional sports, I think baseball is the furthest behind on impacting the next generation of their fan, right? So you're talking about NASCAR that's creating the new experience for the new fan, right? Madden has integrated into the NFL almost a decade ago at this point. And the NBA has NBA 2K, which you're integrating, video games into sports. And yet you're still missing the mark with the young generation who's playing MLB The Show that's watching the actual game, because baseball is not doing a good enough job of integrating a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr., who's the cover guy for the show. He's not important to baseball yet. Right. And you brought up a point of that there's a lot of people still within NASCAR that are in their 60s or older that are still kind of latching on to to the OG of the sport, right? And
Mhm.
we're dealing with that now. I mean, for the first time in the history of Cooperstown, there wasn't anybody elected into the Hall of Fame last year, right? That's that's a thing that
Insane.
happened. And there's
Yeah.
plenty of guys who are eligible for the Hall of Fame, and I
And
think
that
that
should be in, quite frankly.
right, and I
Well,
think that
we could spend
we're still
hours
waiting.
talking. Sorry, we could spend hours talking about whether or not overweight sports writers with back hair sitting at a desk are the ones who should be deciding who's the greatest of all
Sure,
time in a
sure.
sport. But I'm not sure we want to be here until 3 in the morning. So
It's like, well, he cheated. It's like you cheated on your
yeah,
diet often. So
yeah, yeah. So I think that it's good fortune that I was never gifted enough to be a professional athlete, because I would have fist fought reporters, because I wouldn't put up with that crap that they like when the guy that asked Mike Zimmer about his job on Sundays, like, have you heard anything about your job? He goes, no. And funny enough, I haven't heard anything about yours either. It was great. I was like, go get him, Zim.
yeah.
Go down fighting, damn it.
Yeah, Zim knew he was on his way out, and we're gonna
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
the coaching circle here
Yeah.
in just a little bit. I think Todd, if you want to give Nathan one more, and then we're
Yeah.
gonna get into the college football a little bit.
Sure.
So you touched a little bit on iRacing and kind of its impact on sustainment of NASCAR. What do you see the future of iRacing look like for the next 3 to 5 years, and how it continues to build the NASCAR fan base?
So I think it's on a tremendous upswing. iRacing as a company was part founded by some programmers who had worked on different games in the past, but there were some investors from the Fenway Group who previously were team owners in NASCAR, along with Jack Roush Group. And of course, we know the Fenway Group. They own the Red Sox. They're partner owners on Liverpool, the soccer organization. They're all over the place, right? And they helped facilitate the financial side of the development of iRacing, over a decade ago. And so it started as a program potentially used to help drivers, as kind of a learning type of a simulator, and it has become a highly competitive, very sponsor friendly, attractive, video game / simulation for the everyday person. I have run in several iRacing leagues, and it's no different than any other competitive sports league. You're talking, I mean, the just the competitive nature, the drama, everything that comes along with it. It's just like any other adult sports league. I mean, it's that competitive. It's that intense. But the best thing that has happened to iRacing over the lifespan of the program is that Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been one of the biggest believers and buyers of what iRacing was selling. He was a very early adopter of iRacing, and he's now officially part of the company in some capacity. I forget his exact title, but essentially he's kind of the guy that they're looking to for him to say, is this a good idea both for the program and the future of the service? And also, is this a good idea to help expand our fan base? And I will say this. His dad, greatest racer that's ever lived, in my opinion. On the track, he was not quite his dad. However, there has been, in my opinion, and maybe never will be, a better ambassador or racing of any type than Dale Earnhardt Jr. He
Or
is
more marketable person within the sport.
He's marketable, he's likable, but also he grew up around it. He grew up around racing. I mean, he grew up with a steering wheel in his hand, but more importantly than that, he understands the fans. He understands what they're looking for. He understands what a good fan experience means. He's a very, very savvy business person. I mean, he's got, his company, Dirty Mo Media. They have the number one NASCAR podcast. I think it's 1 or 2 times a week they're releasing episodes. It's him and TJ and I can't think of their last names. Couple guys that work for, there's a couple spotters that are in there. It's a phenomenal show. Demarcus can tell me why I can't think of their last
I'm
names.
sure he'll drop it in the chat. He's coming in saying, "Yep, now the Byrons and Smithleys are in the future iRacing to gain
Yeah,
fans."
and I'm glad he mentioned William Byron. So William Byron is who drives the 24. Kind of took the reins, if you will. There was a short period where Chase Elliott kind of came in when Jeff Gordon retired, and it was Chase Elliott's car, and then he moved to another car. They rebranded as number 9. His dad, Bill Elliott, ran 9, so the 24 was available. William Byron is a kid who didn't grow up on the go-kart track. He didn't grow up at the dirt track. Like Kyle Busch's son is 8 years old, 9 years old, running dirt midgets every single week, right?
Mm-hmm.
He grew up playing video games, and he started playing video games, and eventually into his teen years said, maybe I want to try driving a real car. And he went to do that. And 7 years from the day that he first started driving real race cars, he won a NASCAR Cup race at Daytona International Speedway under the lights on national television. 7 years,
That's
almost
insane.
Almost to the day. I think it was to the week. 7 years, William Byron. And by the way, William Byron won multiple races last year. And by the way, William Byron's probably going to win a championship before he's done. Got his start on iRacing. So guys like that, the other name he mentioned, Garrett Smithley, up and coming driver, drives for Rick Ware Racing. It's only a matter of time before he's getting a really big opportunity with one of these super well funded teams. And iRacing has been a big part of that. You've got a guy by the name of Timmy Hill. He's definitely one of the best drivers, in the world. I mean, he's in cup races, things like that, but he's an absolute ace at iRacing. I mean,
you gotta think about it. There's got to be a correlation. Like you think about like fighter pilots training, and obviously we're talking literal massive differences in speed and
sure,
and everything like that, and maybe risk. I'm not sure, but you think about the way that they train, and there's a lot of simulation. There's a lot of that time spent in those iRacing quote unquote cockpits that they utilize, and there's got to be some correlation there between that and what a driver can do in their simulator, and get that real training, from their basement or a studio or something like that. So, there's got to be some kind of relationship there, and you're seeing it if you're talking guys are doing that and then transitioning out into racing and getting dubs. I mean, that's got to be pretty amazing. I do want to give a couple of shout outs here before we move on. Nathan, you're going to stick with us for some football talk, aren't you?
Absolutely.
I love it. So a couple of shout outs here. Josh Wheeler liking the video. Josh, if you're still watching, man, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I mean, actually, the entire city of Indianapolis, we're sorry for what you went through on Sunday at the hands of Sunshine himself, Trevor fucking Lawrence, and Marvin, Mr. Jones, and the Jacksonville Jaguars took it to him. Brandon Schumacher liking the video. What's up, Brandon? Rob, thanks for liking the video. Chris Ferguson, thanks for liking the video. Everybody jumping in. If you're just now joining us, go ahead and jump over to Rally Tile Sports, like the page, follow the page, and if you haven't already, Mr. Nathan Nickell coming to us from 4 laps down. Need to drop that link in the chat, baby. Give us a link.
Yeah.
Give us a link to 4 laps down so these people can get over and show some love.
We have a page that they can like, and we have a group.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's a fan group because it's not really that, but
it's a community.
It's a group that people can join. I tagged and dropped both of those in the chat there. Definitely, if you like the page, make sure you also join the group. There's a lot of discussion that happens in the group. That's not as much happening on the page. The page is kind of the landing spot for the content. The group is where, and people post stuff. It doesn't have to be sports.
Yeah,
I mean,
honestly,
music,
one of the coolest parts about the community page is just the contributions that the community brings to it. Posting videos, whether shotgunning a beer, talking about something that happened, that everybody enjoys it, and the kind of camaraderie that builds, I think is probably one of the coolest things. So Marcus, we'd love to have you on this show. We would love to have you on this show. So go ahead and hit us up on Facebook. We'll go ahead and follow the page. We'll get in touch with you and we'll set something up and we'll get you on here for sure. Absolutely. Love it. So with that said, who stayed up and watched it? How much, on a scale of like 0% to 100%, how much of that game last night did y'all stay up and watch?
40%.
40%. So you were asleep by halftime.
Oh yeah, I mean I have a 9-month-old, so get it while you can.
Sure, I can understand that. I mean, as someone with 3-year-olds, I mean, sure, but Nathan, Did you watch the entirety of the game, or were you lulled? I mean, all things considered, Josh saying he watched 75%. The first half was pretty fucking boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was up I was up way past the end of the game. So yeah, I saw it all.
There you go.
I gotta admit, I actually missed the first half of the third quarter because after the way the first half went,
Like I'm gonna
wasn't
do
really
something better.
wasn't really all that interested. Well, again, not here to promote this, but I was live streaming on Twitch last night. And
Yeah.
kind of I was doing that kind of I have a kind of a routine for when and what time and happened to be the same time as the game. So I'm like, screw it, we'll do it. And was kind of watching on my phone kind of off to the side and it got boring. So I was like, I'm not going to waste the phone battery. I'll turn it off, and I'm playing and my Twitch chat's kind of keeping me up to speed. And they're like, okay, game's getting a little bit more exciting. So I turn it back on and we kind of, obviously on Twitch, I can't show the game or really anything about it, but I can certainly talk about it as it's happening. So I was kind of live reacting as I was watching, the game and different things that were happening. And one thing, my big takeaway was how dominant Nick Saban has been with teams that probably shouldn't be as dominating as they are, because Alabama looked very human all year.
Yeah.
And then they rolled into Atlanta and absolutely slapped the brakes off of Georgia. And we all thought, wait a minute.
Like, hold the phone.
Wait a minute. Right. Fast forward a couple weeks, right? In the semifinal against Cincinnati, right? No one's arguing that Alabama was mismatched there. It certainly was in their favor. But let's be honest, Cincinnati held it together and made it a game.
Sure.
But my Bearcats made it a game for 3/4,
Yeah.
By all intents and purposes, by the size of that spread, by all intents and purposes, that should have been a wash by halftime. And it wasn't. It was a one-score game in halftime, and Cincinnati had a hope and a dream. They just got gassed in the fourth quarter. And that's the difference, right, between the American and the SEC.
Well, we talked about it a little bit and I think there's a little bit of coaching, and even Luke Fickell came out and said, like, listen, I was too conservative. And Desmond Ridder didn't. I don't even think he took off for a run more than 3 yards until the midway through the third quarter. And throughout the season, Desmond Ridder being mobile and moving and pushing the ball with his legs.
That's his dynamic.
That is his dynamic. I mean, that's his biggest part of his game, and in my opinion, is at least it was in the American Conference. Whether or not that'll translate to the NFL, we'll get into that come late winter, early spring when we start talking draft talk. But I mean, your biggest takeaway was the fact that you were saying Alabama looked human, and you were getting, I think, into how they came out last night.
Yeah, I mean they came out very, very dry. Now, granted, Georgia's defense is unreal. No one expected Alabama to drop 50. But one of the biggest things that I noticed in the first half was how well they matched up offensively with Georgia, with what was going on. But the fact that Georgia looked all year every bit as good as they were. There were a lot of times where Alabama did not, right? They did not. And what that tells me, that's the difference between talent and coaching, right? Because you can have a very talented team that's very poorly coached that might win 10 games and drop the ball in a playoff game or something like that. But you look at a team like Alabama, and both times they played Georgia, and I know that last night the score didn't necessarily reflect this, but that game was much closer than that final score. We all know that. Nick Saban brought that team into the building knowing Georgia was a better team than them, right? Georgia was favored both times. Georgia was physically superior, more talented, in my opinion, than Alabama on both occasions. But they went and they smacked him the first time, and Nick Saban brought him back and said, okay, we know what we had to do to beat him the first time. We're going to do it again, right? Obviously, injuries hurt. Menchie being out, that's a problem. Williamson, I think was his name, the receiver that got hurt last night in the second quarter. I think it was non-contact injury.
Yeah, right
I think you guys mentioned it's probably an ACL. I mean, you hate to see that for that kid, but it definitely affects the game, right? And so for Nick Saban to be able to bring his team in and have them perform up at a level that kind of exists beyond what they were necessarily physically capable of or physically expected of, I think is really a testament to his coaching ability. I have yet to see anyone that I would even remotely consider in a conversation as the greatest coach of all time in any sport, in any capacity, that belongs in the conversation with Nick Saban outside of Vince Lombardi. It's the only one I can think of.
I
Now,
think there's
Wow.
somebody at UCLA basketball that might have something to say about that.
fair, fair, and that's fair. It's college basketball is not on my top three, right?
Sure, sure.
So I'm not, but like I said, from what I am most familiar with and what I know, in my opinion, you would have a difficult time convincing me that anyone outside of Vince Lombardi is a better coach, period, than Nick Saban, based on what he's done and the way that he's taken a sport. Somebody made a great point, right? The last great pre-Alabama dynasty college football postseason was when Vince Young and Reggie Bush matched up in the Rose Bowl, one of the greatest games of all time.
I'd say USC, yeah. I mean,
yeah, up until that point, there was kind of your blue bloods, but it was kind of coming in. It was anybody could. Now it's just who wants Alabama in the title game. That's the way it's been
really
ever
is.
since.
And honestly, it kind of turns me off on college football. Like I'm still gonna watch. Like I watched the whole.
I get it.
I watched the whole game last night, but it kind of turns me off because it's the exact same thing. It's like, all right, we're gonna have Alabama, another SEC team, and who's the other two? And does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter ever? And we're clearly not. And I kind of get to this a little bit, and Todd, I'm going to kick it over for your take, but I do want to just point out a couple of things real quick. One thing on Nick Saban, and then I want to touch on Georgia. And Nick Saban, and you talk about being the greatest of all time, and I would tend to agree, at least in respect to college football, greatest of all time. And we've mentioned this a few times on this program, is that Nick Saban can literally walk into the house of any high school college football or high school football player. He can sit on his couch. He can look his mother in the eye. He can look the athlete in the eye. He can look his father in the eye. Look his fucking dog in the eye. It doesn't matter. He can look them in the eye and tell them with 100% certainty, if you come to Tuscaloosa and play for the University of Alabama for 4 years, you will be a national champion. You will. And why can he say that? Because every single time since he has won a national championship, there's been less than 4-year gap between he's done it again. So if you come and you play 4 years at Alabama, you will be a national champion. I got the fucking trophies to prove it.
Yeah.
I think that there's really something to be said for Nick Saban, and we're talking about putting him in the most elite historical category.
What's up, Paul? Thanks for jumping in the chat, man.
I mean, you're talking. If we're saying that he is the great, I mean, in this theory, he's the second greatest coach of all time, in Nathan's opinion, I tend to think John Wooden supersedes Nick Saban, in my opinion, in that category.
It's fair. I guess he belongs in the conversation. I'll give you that.
Was it 11 championships or something like that?
Yeah. And over 150 players that made it to the NBA. Just insane. John Wooden was insane.
Anyway.
But
I digress.
I think there's something to be said about tangibility to a high school athlete now, because the playing field of college football has really leveled out significantly outside of Alabama over the last 5 to 7 years. And now let's enter the transfer portal into the chat, right? And let's talk about how the transfer portal has completely changed the dynamic of college football. UC just got a quarterback that they signed out of high school, then then transferred to Eastern Michigan, and is now coming back to Cincinnati and is basically granting himself a fifth year and will very, very likely be their starter. And we'll see UC's offense change next year. I mean, that's what the transfer portal does for football, for college football. But I think the thing that Nick Saban does, and I don't know if there's any other college coach that is quite as good as Nick Saban is. Here's the proof in the pudding that I am a champion, right? There are a myriad of championships that are on my belt that I can show you. And I think outside of saying, hey, if you're there for 4 years, you're going to win. At the bare minimum, you're in an SEC championship every year. You're in the top 5 talk every single year. You're playing with the best talent in the country year in and year out. At the bare minimum, you're getting the full college football experience. Even if you don't play for 3 years, you get to say that you played on a team that Nick Saban coached and he impacted you in some way. And I just don't think there's no coach really in college sports right now at all, because most of the great college coaches, they don't exist anymore. They've all retired or they've passed on, and it's Saban's really the only one left. I mean, I think you even talk about Pat Summitt from Tennessee's women's basketball team. Yeah. I mean, she's she's somebody that's in that conversation
Yep.
with Gina Auriemma. Same
Yep.
thing with UConn. I mean, those are real tangible results. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just the way that college football has changed in the last, I don't know, let's call it 7 years. And Nick Saban is really the only consistent thing that's existed through all of it.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, I think it's because of Nick Saban that it's changed. The landscape is changing the coaching
Yeah.
because every university is chasing that. Everybody's using every university is chasing that decade and a half campaign that they can literally just have somebody in there that can consistently bring them to the top, and it's an unrealistic expectation. First of all, so you got schools like Michigan doubling down on fucking psychopaths Johnny Harbaugh and signing him to an extension. So you're gonna take
He
your
got
wins
him to the playoffs. Come on.
dude. Get the fuck out of here. Okay, Michigan is never, ever, ever going to even sniff the jockstrap of an Alabama or a Georgia. They just won't. They won't. They can't even come close. They're a solid 8 to 11 players from even being close to Georgia, and that's what I was going to talk about next. Georgia, that defense might have 11 NFL players on it. That defense is insane. I have never seen
Corey, that defense might have 15 NFL players.
Right,
on it.
you're right. You're right. That defense, the amount of pressure, and you can call it scheme all you want. That's not scheme. That's just boys beating other boys. That's what that is.
Yeah,
they
it's pure athleticism.
It's all it is. I have never seen, and I'm watching Alabama run these little like they're gonna run the little option out to to the little speed option to the left. I've never seen a middle linebacker scrape across the top so fast in my entire life. I'm watching this just going like, oh my God, is that a safety? Like, this kid is 300 pounds damn near, just moving like a fucking deer across the field. And I'm just blown away. Just the fact that Florida was even close at halftime with that team is just fucking mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Yeah, tell me about that. I mean, when you look at Georgia, I think this team, and I think the test of time will prove this. This defense that we saw this year very probably will go down as the greatest defense in college football history. I mean, from top to bottom.
Yeah, and you know what? You would think that it was going to be that Clemson one from like 3 years ago. Look across the league. What's Clelin Ferrell doing? What's he doing? Nobody's fucking talked about him.
I think the statistics behind Georgia's defense from this year, there's proof. There's actual proof in that, right? I mean, they gave up less than 10 points a game for the entire
9
season.
points a game.
They had one bad game, which sucks because it was in the SEC championship. But I think Nathan brought up a good point. There was a very distinct difference between Georgia's 11 on the defensive side versus Alabama's 11 on the offensive side. And you're talking about the best tackle in college football is on the other side of that ball, right? And he got handled yesterday. He did not play well. No. And there's no, I don't think you kind of mentioned scheming. There's no scheme to that. That's just
go get them.
Yeah. You put the fear of God in all of them, and you make sure that you put the exclamation point on the season. That's what that was for Georgia.
And the game ended in perfect fashion. Bryce Young sack. Perfect fashion. I mean, it's pretty telling. And you could see that. I kind of felt bad for Alabama, which just tastes like vomit coming out of my mouth right now. But just watching that last drive of them trotting out on the field, and like even Bryce Young's like looking at his wide receivers like, no, go, and telling him stuff to do. It's like, come on, man. Like, this is
Bryce Young. He put a lot of that loss on him, and I don't know.
That last throw was bad. That last throw was bad.
Yeah. But I think outside of that, I don't know if it's like a character thing for me with him, or if he thought that was the right thing for him to say. But he's not the reason they lost.
No, he's not. They're just a better team, and that's okay. Yeah. And I think Nick Saban's presser at the end of it shows a lot about who he is. I can't remember 31 for a defender for Alabama, going to be a first round draft pick in a couple or next year. He's not back this next year, is he? I can't remember. I think he's coming back another year. I think he's only a sophomore. Anyway, they're sitting there at the presser, and the press is going to dismiss them and talk to Nick Saban alone, and he tells them, "Hold on, sit down, boys." And he says, "Can I say something real quick?" And he says that these two right here, and he's talking to Bryce and 31. I can't remember his name. These two right here are not the reason, or excuse me, they aren't. This whole loss is not on them. Essentially, is what he said. They are not defined by one game. As well as another thing that he said. And I think that's huge, especially if I know obviously Bryce Young's coming back next year, but you got these players coming back next year. That just says how much he could sense their hurt coming through in the words that they were speaking and the things that they were saying. He could sense it coming through, and he could feel that, and he needs to know that. Let his guys know that I got you. We're gonna be all right. And Alabama is going to be all right, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to be just fine. They'll probably be back there next year, to be honest with you. They're already preseason number 1 of the way too early top 25.
Nebraska's 25th. They went the best 3-9 program in the history of college football.
But bullshit like that, and you're going to put fucking Michigan at 5. You're going to put Michigan at 5.
Cincinnati's nowhere on the list, and they're returning
19.
A lot of people.
Cincinnati's sitting at 19. The thing.
Oh, they are on the list. Okay.
Yeah, Cincinnati's sitting at 19, and the thing that you got to worry about that is obviously Desmond Ridder. What's that exchange going to look like in the new regime with the new quarterback? Sauce Gardner, one of the top corners in this draft, he's going to be gone. The thing about Michigan, see, it's teams like Michigan and teams like Nebraska. They're in the top 25 and they're in the preseason top 25. Quit selling me this shit. Quit selling me this shit.
Big Ten schools? Oh, weird. That's weird.
Fucking figure. Michigan's
Big
going to be in the
schools
top
that sell
25.
a shitload of season tickets.
Michigan had one of the best defenses in college football this year. Top 5 defense in college football. You can't deny it. But guess what? They ain't going to look like that next year. They ain't going to look like that next year. So
Georgia, who was a defensive first team, laid the wood to them. Yeah. Didn't matter.
Yeah, it's a different level, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. When you're one of the best defenses in college football, and you get fucking scrimmages like Northwestern and Nebraska and yada yada yada, the list goes on and on. And next year, do you know who the out of conference games for the University of Michigan are? They are, they are stepping it up. They're opening the season with Connecticut, obviously one of the biggest massive programs in college football. And then do you know what? A team that's literally losing almost 100 players this year, Hawaii, is going to come to the big house and play Michigan. And then guess who their other out-of-conference game is? The running Rams of Colorado State. They play 0 Power 5 out-of-conference games. Their first 8 out of their 9 games are fucking at home. 8 out of 9. And so what's ESPN going to do? ESPN's going to do this the whole time on all those straight 9 games when they fucking win them all. That's what ESPN's going to do. And I can't fucking stand it. I can't stand it. It's ridiculous.
I'm with you. I mean, I think the biggest thing, my takeaway from this year's playoffs is I think the days of us saying the best teams that aren't Power 5 don't belong. I think that's gone. I expect this system to change because we all know that the college football postseason, whether it's the BCS, the traditional bowl system, the playoffs, it exists to protect, the bigger schools, right? Because nobody wants Cincinnati. I mean, listen, there was no shot Cincinnati was going to get, a number. They weren't going to do Georgia, Bama 1-4, Michigan, Cincinnati 2-3, and run the risk of Cincinnati laying the wood to Michigan on the national, stage. They weren't going to allow that.
Protect your blue buds. Protect your money generators.
It protects them. So it's definitely going to change. But the notion of just like they said, these small schools don't belong in the BCS, and then Boise State fucked around and beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. And then what happens? Well, now we think we might need a playoff. So that conversation's done. I don't ever want to hear anybody. I don't want to hear anyone ever talk about. Well, I don't know. I don't know if they belong. The only person on College Game Day who ran with that trope, and I love him, Lee Corso.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's 170. And back when he was coaching, if you went to a JUCO, you didn't belong in the Division I national championship.
Anyone that's acceptable, where it'd be like, oh, he pissed his pants, and you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like anyone that is the case, probably you just shouldn't care about their opinion.
Now, don't not so fast, my friend. I'm just saying. But my big takeaway is that defense is dominating the world of football right now. You're seeing it in the NFL. Yeah. Well, you're seeing it even more so in the NFL, where defense is a bigger part of the game, and you're going to see these guys. I mean, the guys on my show, we talk we talk all the time about defensive rankings of some of these players, and they're always talking about PFF rankings, which, because I don't play fantasy football, I call the PF Chang ratings, just to make fun of it a little bit. But you're talking about some of these elite cornerbacks who, up until some of these advanced statistics, right, it was really hard to quantify what type of impact are they making. Now that we can, and now that we know what type of impact a guy like a Jalen Ramsey makes, and how anyone that says, despite the interceptions, that Trayvon Diggs is at the same level as Jalen Ramsey, that's clearly not the case, right? And I got lashed for saying Jalen Ramsey was overrated multiple times this year, so I'm kind of eating crow about it a little bit. But my point is this, right? We can quantify that Trayvon Diggs, despite this interception statistic, which used to be the big thing for defensive backs, he's nowhere close to as good as Jalen Ramsey. No. We all know this. He's the Jameis Winston of cornerbacks. It's touchdown or interception. Touchdown or interception. I'm just saying.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny that you bring that up, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, because Darius Slay is a prime example of that in the NFL, right? He is somebody that nobody talks about.
Yep.
And when you get to the deep dive statistics for, ranking a defensive back, Darius Slay is right there with.
Well, look
Jalen
at the fucking
Ramsey,
teams he's played for. He's played for zero playoff teams his entire fucking career. Zero.
Sure, I get that, but that doesn't mean
it's not his fault. No. That's why no one's talking about him. Is all I'm saying. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, that's fair.
No one wants to hear about a fucking corner on a team that just went 6-11. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. Well, sorry, go ahead.
I want to hear about Jalen Ramsey showing up at a Brinks truck at SoFi Stadium or at the fucking in Duval with the bulletproof vest on, and then watch AJ Green just go.
Yeah,
love it.
I think it's funny too, because you guys talked about a little bit about just how defense is changing in the NFL, and I think a lot of that is a testament to the best athletes on the field are edge rushers now, right? The guys that are the biggest, the fastest, and the strongest, who used to be people that you took that frame and made them into maybe an offensive lineman, or you thinned them out a little bit, you turned them into a tight end. Now they're in the backfield 55% of the time on the other side.
Can you imagine Antonio Gates just rushing the quarterback? Because that's what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. They're going out and plucking the biggest, best athletes, the most athletic people in the gym. They're saying, "Oh, you want to play basketball? Come here. Let me teach you how to pass rush." I mean,
just run. Guys, that's all you have to do is just sprint.
Right. Yeah. It's three hand movements and your first step off the ball. That makes you a successful edge rusher in college football. Yeah. If you can rip, swim, and pull, you're fast, you're in the backfield every time.
Yeah, I've made the argument before, and people have told me that I'm crazy, that if LeBron James was 18 years old today, right now, he's an NFL player, doesn't even care about the NBA, because he makes more money in the NFL than he would out of the gate in the NBA. And it's more focused. Now, granted, what we know now about LeBron is obviously that he's one of the greatest of all time. But go back to when he was 18 years old, one of the most heralded basketball players to come out of high school ever in the history of the sport, no doubt, right? No doubt.
Yeah.
Was recruited by.
He was on the cover of ESPN magazine at 15 years old.
Right. Sure. Right.
Yeah, he was recruited by the biggest college football schools.
Ohio State.
And he's already said, I mean, if I was going to play football, I would have only played at Ohio State. I mean, imagine him going to Ohio State, playing 3 years, being turned into, with his stature, 6'8", adding 50 pounds of pure muscle to that frame. Okay. And saying, you got to do these hand motions and you got to be the first one to the ball. Where how is he not one of the greatest pass rushers of all time? You know what I mean? So it's like, so for me, basketball has always been a sport of who is the more athletic player, whereas certain positions in the NFL, it's more about skill, right? Tom Brady's never been the most athletic guy in the gym, but he's the GOAT, right? Yeah. It's different. Well,
I think quarterback's an exception to that, to whereas
I agree, but
athleticism is going to help you, but it's more about decision making, quick mental processing, and then execution on your mechanics. That's all. That's not all. I mean, there's so much nuance that goes along with being in a quarterback. A couple of quick shout outs. Rob Kangas, thanks for liking the video. Charlie Lehman stepping in, our number one donor, Charlie, for our last charitable efforts. Charlie, we appreciate you, and in your honor, per your request, our next charitable efforts, which will be coming around in the Super Bowl, is going to be for St. Jude's Children's Hospital and their research for curing and defeating child cancer and leukemia. And Nathan, if you don't know, 4 Labs Four Laps Down Nation. If you don't know, a lot of what we do is on the charitable side. We mix it with a little bit of gambling because we like to get saucy too. So we did our Capital Bowl one pick'em, a 50-50 split with the Covenant House of Michigan, which helps with displaced youth throughout the community. We were able to raise almost $300 for that. It was fantastic. So this Super Bowl season, we're going to be doing Super Bowl squares. We're going to be selling those off again with a 50-50 split for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So it's going to be an awesome time, and we hope you all are getting in on that. And of course, one more shout out is to Caroline. Thank you for liking the video, Caroline. Thanks for jumping by. So yeah, I think what you guys are hitting on is it's good, and you're going to see it and that's just the way it goes, right? You see the athleticism come through the high school ranks. You're seeing the athletic quarterbacks really being effective in high school. Then that starts to take effect in college, and now you're starting to see it more in the NFL, obviously, with you're not necessarily like super mobile guys, but just athletes at the quarterback position. I'm thinking, obviously Lamar and Kyler come to mind, and then Deshaun Watson, he who must not be named, as well as cheers, Paul. Thank you for dropping by, buddy. Ship Daniel jumping in the chat as well, Nathan. So thinking Russell Wilson, even not necessarily a super running focused quarterback, but mobile enough. Patrick Mahomes, athletic, not super mobile. Even Joe Burrow, his ability to navigate throughout the pocket, all those guys kind of come to mind, and you're going to start to see that, and you're already seeing that. We had Paul Huber in the chat saying he's talking about D lines are taking over. Look at the Titans in the AFC. Look at the Bengals in the AFC. You got Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on either side right now. Formidable defensive ends rush, and then you got the best player in the NFL, in my opinion, Aaron Donald. Where does he play? Defensive line. So obviously the best athletes are gravitating towards that side of the ball. Hope we didn't lose Nathan. Oh, there you go. You blinked. Nathan, you can manage a challenge with the best of them, brother. Look at that. That is amazing. I 100% thought he's frozen for sure. Good. That was amazing. Sorry. That was absolutely amazing. So we've kind of met this transition here. And I think it's a good time to let's just go balls deep in the NFL. My favorite sport is professional football. That is, if you're new to the show tonight, that is pretty much entirely what our Thursday show is about, is NFL football. We pick the games, we talk about them, we talk about the issues in the NFL and the things that are going on. But it's firing season, boys. The regular season is over, and
Black Monday is here and gone.
Yeah, Black Monday is here and gone, and it is bled into Tuesday with a couple more motherfuckers getting the axe, including GMs. But we're gonna focus mostly Nick and Joey Bosa. Thank you, Paul. I don't know how I missed those guys. Obviously, huge edge rushers there. Sorry about that.
Incredible.
Thank you. TJ Watt, JJ Watt. I mean, it just runs in their fucking blood at this point. But who's the next brother duo? That's what we need to find out. NFL head coaching carousel, it's up in the air right now. We've got, correct me if I'm missing anybody. We got the Bears. Sorry, Rob. Actually, Rob's probably happy that Matt Nagy's
Rob's
gone.
stoked.
Rob is so stoked. We got the Vikings with Zimmer, and you had mentioned earlier that one of your funniest things of the week was seeing Zimmer say, have you heard anything about your job? He's like, no, but frankly, I haven't heard anything about yours either. We talked about this last week. This is before week 18. So week 17, Kellen Mond gets some time out there on the field. Obviously, their rookie quarterback. And Kellen Mond gets out there, and one reporter says, hey, coach, are you interested in seeing any more Kellen next week? No. I see enough of him every day. It's just like, God damn it, Mike. God, there are zero fucks given out of Minneapolis from Mike Zimmer right now. And I'm here for it.
He saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
He was done in week 14.
Yeah.
He knew. He knew. I mean, a guy like Mike Zimmer has been around the sport long enough to know. I mean, the fact that the GM got let go, right? If the GM's not sure if he's keeping his job, you ain't keeping yours. No. And the thing is, if I'm Mike Zimmer, I don't care, frankly, because he's going to probably be the number one in-demand defensive coordinator on the market this offseason. He knows it. Might not make as much, but he's gonna be fine.
So
Okay,
that's
he ain't
that's that's the
he
thing I
ain't in the bread
love.
line.
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna say this is the thing that I love is, and I think one of the best things to happen is when you get one of these young offensive-minded head coach, which since Sean McVay and LaFleur, everyone seems to want. Obviously, the Bengals followed suit with that with the hiring of Zach Taylor. They want to find that next young guy that's going to hit the Lincoln Riley hires. Obviously, that young offensive-minded coach, and that's what you want. But to couple that, does anybody remember who Sean McVay's defensive coordinator was? Defensive guy out of Dallas.
Oh, defensive coordinator.
Yeah, defensive coordinator.
Why am I not thinking of this? If Daniel Ship's in the chat, he'll know.
I want somebody to guess it. I'm just gonna just see here.
I'm not gonna look it up.
So it wasn't Raheem Morris. That's not who I'm talking about.
I'm not gonna look it up. I'm not gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
You're gonna look it up.
Yeah, I can't. I could sit. I'm too stupid. I'd sit here for hours.
I am buying time because I'm looking it up too because the name has escaped me. Wade Phillips. It's Wade Phillips.
Oh,
It was Wade Phillips was the defensive coordinator under the Rams. So what I'm getting at is one of these salty veterans within the NFL that's had experience coaching multiple teams, a defensive minded coach, being experienced and coupled up with the offensive minded coach, a younger guy, someone that can tutor him.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I dropped into our group chat, Todd, was a couple of, or one specific reference to one of these teams that in the coaching carousel, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. So we got the Vikings, obviously, the Raiders, obviously one of the first team in the NFL with a coaching vacancy, although based on the performance of their interim, they might have that job locked up already. Biggest shock of the coaching carousel, the Miami Dolphins, because two winning seasons.
Stunned.
Just two winning
Makes no
seasons for
sense.
the first time in 15 years isn't good enough. It makes so much sense. So the Dolphins, and Todd's got a little bit of information on that. We'll get to that in just a sec. Vic Fangio's out in Denver. Obviously, Urban Meyer has gone too much under center for Jacksonville, and the Giants today getting rid of Joe Judge. Nathan, I know you like that one. Getting rid of Joe Judge today as Gendelman had retired yesterday.
No comment.
Ship in the chat here saying Matt Rule still has a job. He's obviously a Carolina Panthers fan, and
well, hold on.
you gotta love the fire. You gotta love the fire that Matt Rule carries, though.
You can't blame Matt Rule.
Why can't you
when
blame
they
Matt
asked
Rule,
him-
but you can blame Joe Brady? Why is that?
So when they asked Matt Rule either yesterday or today about them extending Sam Darnold for his 5th year. They gave him his 5th year option, right? And Matt Rule, I've never seen a professional fumble through answering a question as bad as Matt Rule did. He's like, yeah, we saw what he's on the field. He's a quarterback. He's not we don't have to pay him a lot of money to be our quarterback. He's on the lower end of being a quarterback.
He said this?
But yeah, he said this today.
That's amazing.
I'll post it on our page after we get done. But Matt Rule is just like deer in the headlights.
Yeah, but he's just like, I'm being too honest right now.
Well, he started with like, yeah, we got Sam back. He's our quarterback. And then there was just a 5-second pause where he was just going, and he just, we don't have to pay him a lot. And it was great. But Matt Rule is just a guy that I don't think you don't blame the failures of Carolina on Matt Rule, right? Like it's the same thing. You don't blame the Lions being bad on Dan Campbell. It's not their fault necessarily.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing with the Panthers. And this is just I'm putting on my GM hat right now, and this isn't just for the Panthers. I think there's a couple of teams that have tried to follow this same blueprint, and it's stupid in my opinion. And Josh, if you're still watching, I put the Colts in this position as well. The dumbest thing that you could do is trade for a quarterback that you're going to start. That's the dumbest thing you could do. One, in terms of position and cap versus capital that you're going to give up to get that position, the value could not be lower at the quarterback position. You were going to have to give up too much capital in terms of draft, current players, cash, whatever it is. You're going to have to give up too much of it to get any quarterback. I don't give a fuck who it is. Any quarterback, you're going to give up too much. The Colts are in that same position. Look at what the Colts did to trade for Carson Wentz. Look at what the Eagles did to give up him. Which team is in the playoffs? It ain't the fucking Colts.
Despite having the MVP in their backfield, and it's not Carson Wentz.
Oh yeah, you got Jonathan Taylor as your MVP. If it wasn't a quarterback award, you might be right, but unfortunately, it's best quarterback, not necessarily most valuable player. But I think Tom Brady's got that one locked up. We'll have to hash that.
We'll see. It might be a hot take. We'll see how it ages, though.
Yeah, like wine, like Tom Brady. But I think trading for quarterbacks, I think signing wide receivers in free agency like the Giants have done, I think, and the Jets for that matter, even extending running backs. Those are all things that I'm just not a fan of as a general manager. Running back extensions, signing free agent wide receivers, and trading for quarterbacks. Those are all things that you're going to set up to fail. So what the Panthers have done is basically kick the fucking can 5 years down the road or 3 years down the road, because you're going to suck, but you're not going to suck enough. You're not going to Lions suck. You're not going to Jaguars, Texans suck. You're going to win like 5 to 8 games every year, and you're going to get stuck in this fucking quarterback purgatory where you just won't be able to draft your Joe Burrow. You're not going to be able to draft your Trevor Lawrence, your Baker Mayfield, whichever. Put him where you want Baker. That's a whole nother fucking show, but you're not going to be able to draft these guys that are going to change your franchise in the position unless you get lucky. Lucky. But if you look at quarterbacks drafted beyond the top 5 and their success rate, it ain't fucking there, Chief. It ain't.
Yeah, it's not every day you get the diamond in the rough, the second, third,
Russell Wilson round. In the 3rd round just doesn't happen, boys and girls. It just doesn't.
Or Tom Brady in the 7th. I mean, he's
6. Yeah, it just doesn't fucking happen.
Same thing. Yeah. I mean, 6th, 7th. Who gives a shit at that point, right?
Yeah.
So
the Bengals took a kicker in the 5th.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Money Mac, baby.
I mean, he's the greatest kicker not named Justin Tucker in the NFL today. So
yeah, Shooter McPherson.
There you go.
Chomp.
I have a really hard time blaming Matt Rule for Carolina's success when you have Sam Darnold and Cam Newton as your quarterback options. Man. No, nobody's winning. I don't give a shit. Bill Belichick couldn't win with Cam Newton. What makes you think Matt Rule's going to?
There's proof of that. Yeah, there's
so when I look at a guy like Rule, I can appreciate. I'm not sure I'm on board or understand with him keeping his job, but I can appreciate ownership saying, "Look, we're not convinced it's Matt. We're not convinced he's the problem."
Yeah.
Everybody that watched a Panthers game this year would look at it and say, all right, look, with a serviceable offense, this defense is halfway decent. This could be a 9-10 win team.
They went 4-0 to start the season.
They did.
But if I'm if I'm Carolina, and what's done is done. If I'm Carolina, I go a different route from Sam Darnold. I trade Christian McCaffrey. I trade Christian McCaffrey to get something for him, because you're not going to build your team around around a hybrid scat back slot receiver type guy. McCaffrey's worth something to a lot of teams who are ready to win a Super Bowl now and are just missing that explosive piece in their offense, assuming he can stay healthy. But if I'm Carolina, I go way back to the drawing board. And if Matt Rule's your guy, whatever. But it doesn't make any sense to me that Matt Rule's still there and Sam Darnold's still there and Christian McCaffrey's still there. Like, the definition of insanity is the same thing over again and expecting different results. Right. So to me, I don't get where Carolina's head's at.
Yeah, and I mean the extensions that they gave out this offseason too. I think Robbie Anderson was one of the larger wide receiver contract signings over this offseason. It just, the production wasn't there beforehand, and again, I kind of, to be honest, with I was kind of blown away by the Matt Rule hiring in general. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand that jump to that, because he had a couple good seasons in Baylor and they hired him right away. And I think it's kind of that chase, kind of like we talked about with college football, chasing the Nick Saban. Everybody's chasing the Sean McVay, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what you got.
I think a big part of Matt Rule was prior to him being at Baylor, that program was, I mean, a shit
Nothing.
storm, right?
Nothing.
And
Right.
then he created a very small dynasty in Texas, but Baylor has consistently developed
Well,
some.
hold on. I'm going to push back on that a little bit because Baylor had a Heisman Trophy winner before Matt Rule. It was shit because of the shit that they were doing, and Matt Rule took over a dumpster fire because of all the fucking
Yeah.
scandals that was going on at Baylor.
And let's not
Right.
forget last season, after Matt Rule's been gone 2 years, right?
Yeah,
3
they're
years.
right
Yeah.
back. They're right back.
Last season they were a 2-win season. Now give the current guy credit. His name's escaping me. They won a New Year's Six bowl this year, and beat a pretty good Ole Miss team. Granted Corral was hurt, but my point is this: I can understand if they're not ready to pull the trigger on Matt Rule, but Darnold's still there. I mean, the only people they got rid of are all the coaching staff people that Rule brought.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Ship's saying that in the chat. He's like, they fired every person Matt Rule brought from Baylor except for Matt Rule. So
there you go. There you go. I mean,
yeah.
I will say this as far as the coaching carousel. It's one of my favorite things about the NFL because it's all speculation. It's kind of like fantasy booking and professional wrestling. It's like, well, what if they had this guy and they did this program and this and that and da da da. It's all good speculation. One thing I can tell you is anyone that expects Lane Kiffin to go anywhere from Ole Miss is absolutely stupid because he is waiting. He is waiting for Arch Manning, and they're going to win a national title with Arch Manning. Is what Lane Kiffin's thinking.
Okay.
He thinks he's finally got his title shot. He ain't going anywhere.
Didn't he commit to West Virginia?
Huh?
Didn't Arch Manning?
Arch Manning?
Yeah, didn't he commit to West Virginia?
Not that I saw.
Oh.
I hope not. What a colossal dumpster fire way to end a fantasy fairy tale.
I thought that's what I heard a couple months ago. But I could be off the mark on that one, or maybe it was a verbal or some shit like that. But nonetheless,
they pretty much locked him into Ole Miss. I don't see him going anywhere else.
And that's the kind of thing. It's like, do you chart your own path kind of thing? Is that the kind of guy he is, or he's like, I'm gonna just go do this and I'm gonna be Jesus Christ superstar there in at Ole Miss and in Oxford? So
yeah, I think Kiffin learned his lesson. He went to the NFL, wasn't great, was able to come back and redeem himself as part of Saban's staff, and now he's in a good spot where the expectations I think are adequate for what he can produce and deliver. They're not expecting a 5-year stretch of being in the championship game like the boosters at Bama are. They just want somebody to have to talk about Ole Miss in January, and that's not been something they've had for 20 years.
No, last time we talked about Ole Miss in a big games when they beat Florida in the Tebow era. So that was the last time. That's the last time I remember them being super relevant. And just one thing I do want to mention, there's one more coach that they're kind of mulling things over right now, and they say the decision is going to come down either Thursday or Friday. And it is the first year coach. It's David Culley out of Houston Texans. And they're mulling that over whether or not that team or whether or not he's going to move on, whether or not his performance is acceptable to move on. And one thing that I will say, kind of in the same vein for Matt Rule, is that, and Todd and I have discussed this in length on this show, and I'm interested in your perspective, Nathan, is that why is it that we are willing to give a rookie quarterback 3, 4, sometimes even a 5th year? More often than not, it's not, but it's 3 to 4 years typically before we'll pull it out on him. Look at Baker. Baker's going into his 5th year, and we're not sure yet. Prior to this, labrum injury in his non-throwing shoulder, we were putting Baker in a top 10 position. We were looking at the Browns saying the Browns got their quarterbacks, they got their receivers, they got their running backs, they got their offensive line. They need to shore up a few pieces on defense, and then they're right there, right? That's how we were looking at the Browns coming into the season. Baker gets hurt, things start to fall apart, and now all of a sudden OBJ's dad's posting shit, and everybody's like, fuck Baker, get him out of here, quote-unquote death threats according to his Twitter-friendly wife, which I don't know if I'd trust that as far as I can throw it, but nonetheless, if it's happening, it's not okay. Either way, why are we willing to give such a long leash to rookie quarterbacks but not rookie head coaches? Where is that? And one, mind you, is probably making a lot more fucking money, and it ain't the head coach. especially a rookie head coach. It's just not happening. So I'm just curious in your perspective on why that is. Should it be that way? Should coaches get a little bit more time to develop their program? And your thoughts on that?
I think coaches are more expendable than quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that coaching is something that is a little bit inherent, but for the most part is learned. You learn how to be a good leader. You learn how to be a good coach. It's really hard to teach someone who just doesn't have the arm how to throw a 60-yard dime, right? So you look at a quarterback who if you meet the physical test to be an NFL quarterback, do you have the size, the speed, the arm, the physical attributes, right? Or at least are above the minimum. The rest of it is where the coaching comes in and the development comes in. And it's hard to cut ties with a multi-million-dollar investment in a high draft pick quarterback after 2 years when maybe it is the coaching. Maybe the change we need to make is pairing them with a different quarterback's coach. There are so many variables outside of that athlete's control that can contribute to their development. A great example. It's not a great example, a great hypothetical about this. Let's look at where Trevor Lawrence is in 5 years. One of the most physically talented quarterbacks we've seen in the league, right? Comes out from a great career at Clemson, has all the goods, has all the stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything because he's at an organization that is in shambles. I mean, let's be honest. It is a train wreck. It is a train wreck.
Shambles is a very friendly way of saying that there's just a fully lit dumpster fire going on in Jacksonville, and there's no ETA on it going out.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Nick Wilson and in New York. Nobody's come to the Jets as a rookie quarterback and been properly developed.
Zach Wilson, yeah.
Zach Wilson, Zach Wilson. I mean, Sam Darnold's the laughing stock of the quarterback world, and he started at the Jets. And but to your point, we're giving Sam Darnold's got a second chance with a completely other franchise, and they saw what they saw. But it's a new coaching staff. It's going to be a newer coaching staff here coming soon. But the thing with coaches is that there are so many coaches. It's also too, every single college has 10 coaches on staff, maybe more. Every single NFL team has 10 coaches on staff, probably more. Any one of those guys could eventually work their way up from being the strength and conditioning coach at a D2 college to 30 years from now being a successful championship winning NFL head coach. Not everybody's got a journey like Nick Saban, where it's head coach, NFL, Alabama. Most people are strength and conditioning, and then they're positions coach, and then they do this and they do this. And a lot of times those people come from guys who are identified on the field while they're playing as great leaders. You look at Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator in Dallas, great quarterback in college, had a cup of coffee in the NFL, was very clear very early. He didn't have the stuff. So what did they do? Well, you're a phenomenal leader. Everybody looks up to you, and you're pretty smart when it comes to the offense. Let's see what you could do on the other side of the ball. And now, if he doesn't land a head coaching job, it's going to be because he doesn't want one, not because he hasn't earned it. He's calling all the plays for Dallas. Dallas has had a really good offense for the most part over the last couple of years. He's a big reason why. If that guy is not a head coach by week 1 of next year, it's because he doesn't want to be. He turned down the head coaching job at Boise State. Most likely Jerry Jones is making it worth his while, and that's all fine and well. But
he might be waiting for Mike McCarthy's ass to get a boot.
And you know what? Why wouldn't you? If you could say I could be the head coach at Boise State and make $1.5 million a year, or I could coach the Dallas fucking Cowboys, it's an easy decision. It's an easy decision. Yeah. And the thing with coaches is that if Kellen Moore is given an opportunity to coach the Dallas Cowboys, right? Take Mike McCarthy, for example. He's got a ring, right, in Green Bay?
Yep.
Yeah, McCarthy's a Super Bowl winning head coach. Sat out for what, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years? Gets shit canned from Green Bay, which, whatever. I mean, I guess it was deserved. Sits out for a couple years, finally lands a job with the Cowboys. What do most coaches do? Well, they don't sit out. They go take a job as an offensive coordinator. There's a lot of people saying one of the top offensive coordinator candidates this year, Dan Mullen. Great offensive mind. Couldn't get it done as a head coach in Florida. A lot of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, still a good offensive minded guy.
Yeah.
Most people assumed he'd end up in Jacksonville. Probably not anymore. But
Man, just real quick on that while you're bringing it, just because it pisses me off. What a dog shit recruiter. Am I right?
right? Well,
What a dog
that's
shit
the thing.
recruiter.
Good in-game coach, good offensive mind, good play caller, doesn't know how to build a program. I would say Urban Meyer gets a lot of credit as this phenomenal recruiter, and he's a great recruiter. But let's be honest, Urban Meyer's major coaching career was kickstarted by a guy. You remember Ron Zook?
Yeah.
You remember the team Ron Zook built that mollywopped the Buckeyes, where the only person that really played substantially in that game that Urban Meyer recruited was Tim Tebow. And by the way, Tebow wasn't the starting quarterback that year. Ron Zook, terrible coach, terrible, awful, the worst. Great recruiter, built a great team. That's why great college coaches don't automatically translate to the NFL. There's a reason that Nick Saban's been successful in college and not the NFL. It's a different mentality. It's a different mindset in the locker room. It's a different type of player. And Nick Saban has found where he is the most successful. There are guys like, Urban Meyer and Lane Kiffin who jump to the NFL because they think, well, I'm a good coach, I got it. And it just doesn't work out.
Well, I think there's a bit of the lure to the NFL, and Nick Saban, he thought he was that as well. Let's not forget that. Nick Saban was a stint with the Dolphins, very unsuccessful. And I think there's a lure to the NFL, right? I mean, if I go south of the Mason-Dixon line, they might, string me up by my boots for saying this, but anyone that can look me in the eye and tell me that they enjoy college football better, that college football is better than NFL, you just don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't know what you're talking about. It's not different. It's not even close. Like, in my opinion. Yeah. In my opinion, again, this is just me. It's my fucking show. No, I'm just kidding. But no.
I've used that line.
No, but it's a better product. You're literally getting the best of the best in every single aspect of the game. Those are the best, and that's why they're there in terms of on the field, right? Yeah. Whether I'm not going to sit here and try and debate whether or not Joe Judge is a better coach than Nick Saban. I'm not going to sit here and say that.
Right.
That's stupid. But in terms of the on the field product, the NFL is of course better. Like, week 1 am I going to watch fucking Tulane and Wisconsin battle it out? Whoop-de fucking do.
Right.
No, right. I'd rather watch Seahawks Raiders or some random team that I don't care about. You know what I'm saying? So that's just that's the lure that comes along with the NFL, and that's why they do it, in my opinion. There are 40 top tier coaching jobs in college football, at least. I mean, depending on the pockets of the boosters, right? That's what it all comes down to. I mean, shit. Look at Mel Tucker, Michigan State. He's a top 5 paid coach in college football now. $12.5 million a year, because 2 boosters said, "Yep, he's the guy. He's the guy," and they might be right. But they might be right. But and then you look at the NFL. There's only 32 of them, boys and girls. There's only 32. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. And the thing is with coaches, like I said, they're more expendable, because it doesn't cost. Outside of I'm not talking about the contract or what you owe the person, but if you build a team around a guy like Joe Burrow and he doesn't work out, it's completely different than bringing in a guy like Zach Taylor and saying, Zach, go coach this team. They could remove Zach Taylor tomorrow, okay, and bring in Joe Judge, right? The Bengals are still going to have a certain level of success. They could get rid of Joe Burrow tomorrow and keep Zach Taylor and everybody else and replace him with Sam Darnold and cut their wins in half, maybe worse. So I think the value of the on-field product is more substantial from the quarterback position, but beyond what's more valuable, it's the cost if it doesn't work out.
No, I agree. I think that I understand that. My whole point behind in the original point of the question again is, why is it that we have more of a long leash for quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, than we do rookie head coaches in the NFL? And I'm glad you brought up Zach Taylor, because I think he's the perfect example of why you need a longer leash on these head coaches and giving them an opportunity. Like Dan Campbell, for instance, of the Detroit Lions. There's 0% chance I think Dan Campbell should be fired, at least. There's no way I'm firing that guy. If you watched a Lions game, if you watched how hard this dog shit roster played for this practice squad roster played for Dan Campbell, and the way that they compete
Yeah.
every single Sunday, there's not a chance in hell I'm firing Dan. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about. Yeah, he's fucking weird. He did a press conference with a racing helmet on for the, Belle Isle race, the Detroit Grand Prix, and he's talking about fucking biting off kneecaps. Yeah, it's weird, but guess what? The team buys in, and he's come
Yeah.
from winning organizations, and he's brought people in from winning organizations, and they know what winners look like. And,
Yeah.
and so there's no way I'm firing. There's no way I'm firing Cully out of the Houston Texans right now either. There's no way, unless you already came in knowing, hey man, we might not keep you more than 1 year. Prove it to us. Shock the world. Compete for the division. We'll keep you another one. But I think there's something to be said about giving a coach an opportunity to turn over a roster. And I bring up Zach Taylor. Look at what he's done with the roster in the Cincinnati Bengals. How many starters on defense were drafted by Marvin Lewis?
How many starters on defense?
How many
I don't know the
starters?
exact answer to this question.
2. Jesse Bates
Fair.
and Sam Hubbard. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Marvin Lewis was supposed to be this defensive-minded scouting guy and development of a linebacking core. When's the last time the Bengals had good linebackers? At least this good. And the depth that they have at linebacker right now.
Yeah.
Jermaine Pratt in year 3 just making strides, man. He's going to be a starter next year, Jermaine Pratt is. I put that in the books. Logan Wilson, just a home run 3rd-round draft pick. Marcus Bailey, a 7th-round draft pick, is just absolutely balling when we need him right now, adding depth to that linebacking core. So my point is, it took 3 years to get here. It took 3 years for him to bring in these free agents and turn that roster over, at least from the defensive side. Looking ahead down, 5 miles down the road, postseason, I think you're gonna, off season, I think you're gonna start see it. They're gonna start working on the offensive side. That's just my prediction. You're gonna start seeing the strategies flip. We're gonna free agent offense, draft defense to add rookie depth on that side of the ball. But I digress. Todd, I'm curious, any perspective on the coaching carousel and the length of time that they allow these guys. And I'm really interested in your Brian Flores take.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Brian Flores take, because I think that's the one that a lot of the NFL world was shocked about, right? Is, hey, this guy's back-to-back winning seasons. You start 0-7 and finish 9-8.
Yeah.
Why leave, right? And so I started
1-7.
Right, 1-7. Thank you. So I started digging in a little bit. I tried to get my feet wet into the Miami Dolphins social media world on Twitter, and there are not a lot of good Dolphins fans out there. There's not a lot of good Dolphins writers out there.
You're just learning this when the Joe Burrow draft and the Jamar Chase draft and everything that all these people said about don't go to Cincy, go to Miami. It's a much more stable organization.
So I'm digging in and getting my feet wet, and I'm trying to kind of basically find my guy that I trust, right?
Yeah.
And so I end up finding this guy that doesn't really write for the Dolphins. He actually writes more for the Heat, but he works for,
Miami Herald.
He basically works. I think he works at and he starts talking about Tua being the reason why Brian Flores was fired. And I'm like, all right, well, that seems weird. Why is it a second?
I'm going down this rabbit hole.
Right. So then I start reading in it, and now it's Tua and Greer together had beef with Flores. So just to be, from what I read, Flores did not want Tua to play. He did not want Tua to be their starting quarterback. That was one of the big things. He didn't want them to draft Tua. So
is he wrong?
I think that's fair. I don't think Tua is the answer for the long term.
I like Tua. I like Tua, and I like what he was able to do. I mean, listen, this guy's been beat up for the last 2.5 years, man. And
sure.
He still came out and listen, when they started playing Tua, how'd they do?
Better.
Look, and I think I think the big thing is, and Corey, I think we talked about it a little bit, is there's no running game development in Miami, right? There is no running game in Miami, and so
literally the running game went to Oakland, and his name was Kenyon Drake, and he doesn't even fucking start there,
right? And so, but then Miami drafts Jalen Waddle, right? But he doesn't make a surge into the league really until week 7 or 8. The guy has almost 1,000 yards in the year, and he didn't have his first 100-yard game until like week 13.
Yeah.
He wasn't even a part of the offense when they started 1-7. He didn't exist, and they didn't have Devontae Parker. Their highest yard receiver was Mike Gesicki for a short period of time, and he is a mid-level tight end. So
Sure.
I don't understand maybe if I'm Brian Flores and you're winning, why you don't want to back your quarterback. When do you hear about a GM backing a quarterback over a head coach?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard that before.
I mean, listen, at that point, so if I'm reading the tea leaves here, the GM wanted to draft Tua, the coach didn't.
Right.
At the end of the day, whose job is drafting? It ain't the head coach. The GM
Sure.
drafted Tua. That issue, that stick persisted. Instead of, Brian Flores is a strong-willed human being, and he's not going to just let something go. Probably if he feels he's right in his institution and he's going to stick to it, he's not going to let it go. It was an issue that persisted. The wound festered, and it resulted in Brian Flores, who, again, first time the Dolphins have had back-to-back winning seasons in over 15 years. And they fired him, and it's not because of the winning.
And they beat New England in Week 18, and it was a game New England really needed to win.
Yeah, and they looked
it
like
wasn't
shit,
like New England threw it away.
Yeah, New England looked like shit in that game.
I think to kind of put a really pretty bow on this, we're talking about the coaching carousel, and we're talking about, Nathan brought up a point of that the head coach is more expendable than the quarterback. This is your example, guys. Yeah. This is the prime example right here, right? Yeah. If Chris Greer said, I want Tua over Brian. And I think that from our perspective, it's, what the fuck are you thinking? That's crazy. Brian Flores is is a forward thinking, innovative coach, right? He is a guy that breeds young talent and gets them ready to be your star. And any team right now is chomping at the bit to at least get an interview. Denver immediately was like, give me an interview with Brian Flores as soon as he was fired.
Great.
Yeah, Flores is going to be the first guy hired off the market. I mean, my opinion was that he should have probably won Coach of the Year last year with what they did there. Now, granted, as soon it's the NFL, so if you win 10 games, now that's the bar.
Yeah.
Right. You don't get to win. You don't get to win 12 games and then be like, well, we won 9 games. Well, last year you won 10. So I get it, but at the same time, I think what you're seeing here is an exact proof in the pudding of the coach is more expendable than the quarterback. However, I'm not sure this is the best case study for the same reason that Corey said. The GM drafts, the head coach puts the team on the field.
Yeah.
Right.
Tua is a guy, let's be honest, Tua is a guy that everyone wants to root for. Everyone wants to succeed. The way he carries himself, the things that he does, he's a team first guy. He's got the exact right attitude that a leader should have. He's just not quite there when it comes to the skill set, right? I can think of another left-handed quarterback that maybe was a similar type of individual coming out of college. We won't name his name, but Tua is a guy that everybody wants they want to see him succeed. He's a good guy. He makes no enemies. People want to play hard for him. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's completely reasonable to think that this GM is not going to let his head coach say, neener, I told you so. So there's a problem. What's the problem? Well, it's not Tua because that was the guy I drafted and I'm not wrong.
Right.
It must be you, Brian Flores.
Right.
And what's going to happen? This is what's going to happen, right? Assuming this is the case. Brian Flores is going to go somewhere, call it Denver, because that makes sense and be a good landing spot for him. And within 3 years, Denver's going to be a competitive, deep playoff run team, and the ownership at Miami is going to look at it and say, wait a minute. How come that's not us? We're still 7-9 and we're 2 quarterbacks away from Tua.
Yeah.
And you're still the GM.
Right.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think
help me understand.
Yeah. The Dolphins are probably one of, and everybody talks about the Browns and the Bengals and the Jaguars and the Jets and things like that. In my opinion, the Dolphins
are in that.
The Dolphins are one of the worst run organizations in the NFL, and you can't convince me otherwise. Yeah, they just built this
Yeah.
beautiful new stadium, and they host Super Bowls there, and beautiful bowl games, and the Orange Bowl's
Yeah,
there, and they have all this money, yada yada yada. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dolphins are a dumpster fire. They haven't been relevant in 40 fucking years. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I think the funny thing is that there was a real genuine point in time where the Dolphins were going to trade Tua to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
That was the conversation that was happening at the midway point of this year.
I speculate that was all media and that conversation never happened, because I don't understand how, if that conversation legitimately happened, that you at that point were willing to admit Tua's not the guy, but then you fire Brian Flores. Yeah. I call bullshit. I say that conversation never happened. I say it should have happened and it didn't. And Brian Flores was probably the first one in the GM's office saying, why the fuck is this something we're talking about? You're talking about a team like Washington or even Philly or potentially Pittsburgh next year getting Deshaun Watson. And we're sitting here playing a guy that is never going to be an elite quarterback in the NFL. And we have a shot to get him to get one, because Deshaun Watson's got a lot of mileage left on him, and this conversation's not happening. I would guarantee you this firing of Brian Flores was personal. It's going to come back and expose this GM, and I would be willing to say that it happens within 3 years when Flores goes somewhere else and takes the team to a level that they're not at today, whatever that may be. Maybe it's an early playoff to a late playoff. Maybe it's a 2-14 team into the play. I don't know what that looks like. It depends on where he goes.
It'd be interesting if the Giants brought him in and Deshaun Watson decided to go to New York.
So that's kind of, I'm thinking. So I heard the Broncos thing, and I'm like, I just don't see the Broncos hire an offensive coordinator. That's my guess. Because Elway needs somebody that he can basically mold into doing whatever he wants the franchise to do. Yeah. That's what John Elway wants.
He sucks.
But
that's fair.
When the Giants fired Judge, that's immediately what I thought. Holy shit. Brian Flores in New York with a little bit of money, and now you're going to have a brand new GM too, right? Your GM retired. So let's rebuild.
So
the
only thing that makes more sense to me, all that, and the only reason I'm not saying is because they have a great interim head coach. The thing that makes the most sense for me, the Las Vegas Raiders. That defense is already ready. It's ready to go. It's set up. Mike Mayock has done a great job of adding depth to that defense, and it is rearing to go. So if I had to pick the best fit, I would say the Raiders. I think that would be the best way for him to step in.
They're the most ready to win right now. I think he comes in and he's able to take that team. The Raiders are going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. You can take that to the fucking bank this year. But I think that next year, I can almost bet, right? I can almost bet that the Raiders will probably win a playoff game, and they'll probably get to a level that such a storied franchise in the NFL has not seen in decades. Yeah. I mean, everyone talks about the Raiders as one of the great franchises.
Top 5 playoff winning percentage, actually.
But they haven't been there. I mean, Derek Carr,
19 years, second appearance in 19 years.
Derek Carr has never played in a playoff game.
That's crazy.
Never, not once.
Yeah,
and Derek Carr's been inconsistent as hell. And it's insane to me. So I think Brian Flores is the first one off the board. I think a lot of these teams, I don't see there being any other candidate outside of Brian Flores that's ready to go right now, other than Eric Bieniemy. He's the other one that comes off the board. The rest of these teams, I think, maybe can get creative. I think you might see some of these college guys. What's his name from Iowa State? I think is somebody that could end up there. I think
Byron Leftwich, the Jacksonville Jaguars, with defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's the other one.
Lewis.
I mean, oh no. So you think the Jags go after Byron Leftwich and bring in Marvin Lewis?
Marvin Lewis or Mike Zimmer? Yeah.
I think I'm with Corey. I think Byron Leftwich is the next coach in Jacksonville, and I think Mike Zimmer is his defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Byron Leftwich, outside of he's the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay. He doesn't have to. There's not a lot of on-field development for him, right? He's not calling.
He calls the plays. He doesn't have to rally the troops,
right.
To be honest,
but I think the thing that Byron Leftwich, and you talk, I put him and Kellen Moore in a very similar category, right? Byron Leftwich coming out of Marshall wasn't going to be the next big thing in the NFL, right? He was a higher draft pick. He went to the Jets and the Jaguars. He did his time, and it just didn't pan out. So what's the next best thing? Hey, really good football IQ. Let's get you on the sideline.
Get your headset, dog.
Right now, he's got a ring. So now he looks even better,
Yep.
right? Oh, your head coach is Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians
Spent
isn't
2 years with
a
Bruce Arians, man.
yeah, and that's no slouch. That's no
No,
slouch on the resume.
nope.
So yeah, I think Byron Leftwich is
I'd be
another guy. I
jazzed if I'm a
actually think
Jags fan, and that's the higher. First of all, what person would better unite this fucking, as we've said, dumpster fire, this literal, you know, north-south civil war that's literally happening in the city of Jacksonville, but over these Jaguars, between the front office and ownership and the fan base, and are they moving to London, and what's going on, and our coach is a fucking creep, and all this stuff. Who better to carry the banner of the ugliest green I've ever seen in the puke yellow that is the Jacksonville Jaguars than Byron fucking Leftwich? The entire
and
city, Byron. And they got a young
if
quarterback. And let's be honest,
right,
listen, Urban left that defense in good state. That defense is decent at worst, right? They're at worst decent. They give up, I think, average like 20 points a game or something like that. It's not that crazy. Like, it's not
Was
that
Charlie
bad.
Strong his defensive coordinator?
Charlie
Was
Strong.
it Charlie Strong at Jacksonville?
I'm not 100% certain. That would be fucking hilarious if it was, but
I think it is.
that's amazing.
I
But
love Charlie Strong. Don't talk shit about
no,
Chuck.
no. I'm not talking shit. No, I love Charlie Strong. Love Charlie Strong. Anyway, come on, man. Anyway, so a lot that we've covered tonight. We are dragging. We've eclipsed the 2 hour mark, ladies and gentlemen. We had a great long show tonight. I mean, Nathan bringing the horde of Four Laps Down Nation into the Rally Top Sports stream tonight. We appreciate everybody that came out and checked out the video. It was awesome. We had a great chat. You guys were driving this Town Hall Tuesday, throwing stuff out for us. I'd be remiss if I didn't go ahead and give a shout out to Ted Henry jumping in the chat as well. Sorry, Ted, we were getting into it a little bit and getting a little long in the tooth there as we were rambling on about this coaching carousel. But Ted, I appreciate you dropping by, bud, and everybody else that jumped in. Paul, appreciate that. It was a great show tonight. It was awesome. So go ahead and if you would follow Four Laps Down. And check out their show on Friday nights, Fourth and Long, where they go ahead and pick the games. And if you're in Four Laps Down Nation, come check us out Thursday night. We'll be doing our pick'em and going through wild card weekend, super wild card weekend, getting kicked off this weekend as the Bengals take on the Raiders. So you guys have been awesome. We love you. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple days. Nathan, shout out to you, man. It was awesome getting you on the show tonight.
Really glad to be here, man. This is fun. Thanks.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.